Welcome to the Post Shift Podcast, your raw look at the hospitality industry, brought to you by SHC. What is happening, Post Shifters? Welcome back to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. If you are following along at home, yes, I have done 2 live streams today. With me having only a certain amount of time at home in my office, I try and jam as much as I can into every week as I possibly can. And so this is my second live stream for the day. So I have been a busy boy, and I've been very, very fortunate to do back-to-back fantastic live streams today. But earlier today I did Julie Reiner, and then now I've got Jack McGarry, and I've known Jack for 15 years or so, since he bartended in Belfast. His friend Shawn, and his ex-partner Shawn, was a good friend of mine, basically because the Merchant Hotel where they both ran back in the day got a nomination at Tails for World's Best Hotel Bar, and so did Clive's at the time. So it's like 2011, 2012, I think, 2010, 2011. And we sort of connected because we were both small market bars and hotel bars to boot. So it was kind of like this connection between, hey, you're a small market guy and I'm a small market guy. We should be friends. And so, but I really want to delve into this. I was lucky enough a couple of weeks ago to be in Annapolis for Shawn Finter's course. I can't speak high enough about Shawn Finter's mastermind course in Annapolis. Annapolis is a fantastic little town to be in. But just this hospitality that Shawn and Ali do, it's a really family affair. And Jack was one of the guest speakers for that week. And it was just amazing to hear the focus and the direction and the mentalities towards not just hospitality and redefining Irish pub culture, but just about how to expand your business and how to continue having soul in your venues as you become a multi-unit operator. And Jack is just one of the smartest operators I think I've been allowed to listen to in my career. And even I think at Tails last year, there was a seminar about multi-unit management, and I went to that one, and I think it was his GM, and she was amazing as well. So you can see how infectious his mentalities become within his group. So I hope I didn't plug you up too much.
Thank you very much for the kind words. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's been great because I think I interviewed you and Shawn like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and I think lots of stuff have changed for you over this time, and it's just incredible. So for everybody watching or listening at home, like give a quick little origin story about how you got started all the way up to when the inclination of Dead Rabbit originally came about.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our stories are all pretty similar in the sense of we happened upon the hospitality industry as opposed to something that we were working to get into deliberately. And my story is no different. I was constantly badgering my mother and father for money when I was 14, 15, looking for 5, 10 quid to go out and buy the next the latest t-shirt or trainers and trying to show off the girls, you know. So my mom particularly got peeved by that. And she basically said, listen, son, we're not millionaires. If you want something in life, you have to go out and earn it. Unfortunately, my cousin literally lived or worked and ran a bar right down the bottom of the street. We lived in West Belfast, called the Hunting Lodge, and my father gave him a call, and the next week I had a meeting with him, and I started working as a bar back and cleaning ice trays. This is pre smoking ban and filling up the back bar, getting ice, all of that fun stuff. And he started going around different bars in the area, and this is post Good Friday Agreement. So this is when the sectarian violence and the trouble, what are known as the troubles, started to subside, and Belfast was coming out of itself. So during that time, people were migrating from their local neighborhood bars like the Hunting Lodge and into the city centre, and we had the advent of what Belfast people called the style bar. And basically, what a style bar was is a bar that had fancier chairs and bar tops and drinks than your local boozer. And my cousin ran one of these style bars called Cafe Vaudeville, and that was the first time I was exposed to cocktail bartender. And him making a round of drinks for customers at the bar, and it was just that whole show of making these drinks and the way that he moved was so divergent and alien to just pulling pints. You know, it was very theatrical, lots of fluid movement, and then these four exotic drinks appeared to two couples, and they had the drinks, and they were just blown away. The way that they responded to those cocktails just completely impressed me, and that's really what got me into cocktails, and that started the process of getting to know Sean Muldoon, who had a connoisseur, a thing to call a connoisseurs club that he ran at the Merchant Hotel, which was really, this was the advent of that. You know, now this is ubiquitous. Bartenders going to speak in other bars, or like the likes of you going to Belfast to talk about the Canadian cocktail scene. Back then that just did not happen, and it was really going to those connoisseur clubs and seeing the likes of Sasha and Audrey and Robert Hess and Gaz Regan and Dale talking about the industry, and then me sitting there as a 17, 18 year old realizing, God, there's a career in this if you really knuckle down and focus on it. And after the one with Sasha, he was talking about Milk and Honey, and he was with Mickey McElroy, who owns Attaboy. They were, so Mickey was the bartender, Sasha was talking. And I just gobsmacked by the end of that session, and it was right in front of the Merchant. They had it outside of the main sort of promenade. And after that, we went to the bar right across the street called the Spaniard, which is a rock and roll rum bar. And I had about 10 pints of Guinness and 10 dark and stormies, and went up to Sean afterwards, and blabbering said that I would like to work with him because everybody was telling me Sean was the best in Ireland. And my opinion was, if you want to be the best, you got to work alongside the best. And yeah, that's how it started. So we started working together. Sean is an extremely talented storyteller, very driven, very focused. And the first meeting I had with him, he sat me down at table one of the Merchant. So you walk into the bar of the Merchant, you take a right, and then to your immediate left, it's the first table there. And he sat there with a plate, two plates. One plate was a perfectly cut piece of ice. You could see right through it. It was crystal clear. And then on the other plate, there was a cube ice that was cloudy and imperfect. It was jagged. And he lifted up both the cubes, and he said, "You can be this type of person in terms of being somebody that strives for perfection, or you can be this type of person that's somebody that settles." And he said he only wanted to work with the perfect cube type of people, which the perfection type people, and that was somebody that was very much speaking my type of language, even if I didn't know what that language was called back then. And we started working together, and that in the next couple of years, that's when the Merchant started exploding. You know, Sean exposed me to 19th century cocktail books, early 20th century cocktail books. He had a phenomenal palate. You were getting to sit with the likes of Audrey Saunders until 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning when the breakfast staff are coming in, going through one drink 50, 60, 70 times. And that's what really helped me start on the path of becoming that bartender. And through that period, we started winning the world's best awards, because up until then we were winning Irish best awards, UK best awards, and then we started winning the big ones, the world ones. And that's when the door opened to Dead Rabbit, and a customer came in who's called Connor Allen, and he saw what we were doing, was very impressed by what we were doing, and he traveled the world over. And when he was in Tokyo, we connected him with Yuano San. When he was in Brooklyn, we told him to go to see Julie at Clover Club. When he was in San Francisco, we said go and see Julio. You know, so we went to all the best bars, and he was of the opinion what we were doing in Belfast was something that deserved to be on a bigger stage. And that's how the talk of the Dead Rabbit came to be. And his only brief was to build something that would not be here today and gone tomorrow, because as you know better than anyone, Sean, and like having the experience that you have, a lot of these cocktail bars open and they burst into life, and they're the hot bar for the moment, and then they quickly fade away. So he wanted something that would stand the test of time, and really it was that we decided to integrate our love of Irish pubs with cocktail bars, and the vision of that was the Dead Rabbit, which my uh, business ex-business partner, but obviously still friend, Sean Muldoon, he put together the whole concept of the Dead Rabbit to reconcile those two loves, and then we opened. and the rest is history, I suppose.
So how like that? Most people know the history of the Dead Rabbit. How has it evolved under your leadership in a way that I know the definition was an Irish pub, but you've really knuckled down exactly what your definition of like back of a napkin of what Dead Rabbit is.
Yeah, I mean, so I got I mean, I'm sure most people listening to this or watching this or whatever will know my story. I came out of hospital with addiction issues in 2016, I believe, because yeah, I'm coming up in 10 years this year. And we won all the award. My whole goal up until that point, up until 2013, 14, winning World's Best Bar in 2015, 16, my whole raison d'etre or esprit de corps was to be the world's best bartender and to win world's best bar. You know, and it was very narcissistic, very uh, short. Like I didn't care about anybody else. That was a goal, and we won that award or those awards, and I realized that that was not what I really like. You know, I lost purpose, and I quickly that was the start of the descent into addiction and the sort of the mess that I got myself in. And it was really when I came out of hospital, really came to grips or terms with that my bartending career as it was done. I'd accomplished that chapter, and I needed to go on to a new one. And it was really coming out of rehab, and it was outpatient rehabilitation was about a year and a half long process. I wasn't sure if I was going to stay in the industry. I wasn't sure what I was going to do or where I was going to go. But one thing about me is I've total confidence in my own ability. So if I just decided, obviously there's limitations. If I'm saying to you now, I want to go and be an astronaut, that's going to be difficult because I'm 36 and there's limitations. But I know how to learn. I know how to. I'm very determined, committed, obsessive. So I've got this addictive personality, and I was at that point I was beginning to come to terms with how to focus it on good things as opposed to destructive things. And it was also during that time where I realized being sober that I was a shit leader, an abysmal leader. So we opened up the bar, and the bar won all these awards, but I was this phenomenal bartender back in the day, and I'm not saying that from an egotistical standpoint. I was a very gifted bartender, but I was a terrible leader. And when I got sober, I looked at the Dead Rabbit and what we were doing. And I was like, how do I continue to show up to that and contribute? And really, during that period is when I was going towards operations, and that's when I went to Sean Finter's classes. Like we were
Mhm.
at one, and I was very impressed because I was reading hundreds of these cocktail books from the 19th, 20th centuries and five or 600 of these books, but there was no books about how to run a bar, how to be a good leader, or how to be a good mentor, or give good advice, not be an arsehole. So when I went to Sean's class that day in New York, I was blown away, and I went up to him the same way I went up to uh, Sean Muldoon. I have a lot of Seans in my life, and I went up to Sean Finter and said, "Listen, you're the best at this. I want to learn what you know." And he was like, "I have this session. I have this program coming up that you were part of as well." And I went to it, and I said to him, "Give me your reading list," and he gave me 100 books. I bought all 100 books. Then I brought a million other books, and I went into a real intense learning phase about the back end operations, leadership. And then another part that I was starting to fall in love with again was obviously the reason why I got into this industry was that moment that I just described to you about those two couples, hospitality,
Mhm.
giving people something novel, giving them something cool, giving them something authentic. And it was during that time that we opened up Blacktail, which was a Cuban bar. And a lot of people outside of America, an Irish person opening a Cuban bar makes sense because there's a shared identity there in terms of this is getting heavier, but like imperialism, colonialism, all that type of stuff. But it didn't land for New Yorkers because nobody was like, well, if I want to go to a Cuban bar, it should be a Cuban guy that or a Cuban gal that is running that. And that was really my first lesson because I become very introspective anytime. we win or we lose, and try to draw the right lessons from it. And that was a point where I was fully focused on sticking to the knitting in terms of what is our sandbox. And the thing that
Mm.
gets me out of bed in the morning is Ireland. That's what I'm passionate about, and challenging those misconceptions, creating new experiences around that. And again, during that period, I was just falling in love with the Ireland of today, not the Ireland of, again, sober eyes walking through New York and seeing all these caricatured misconceptions of Irish culture, and I wanted to really rail against that. And that's where there was a splitting of the paths in terms of Shawn wanted to go a certain direction, I wanted to go to a certain direction, and there's not to say one direction was better than the other. They were just two different directions, and that was really, it was COVID that crystallized that in terms of, and then Shawn was also getting fed up in New York, and there was a whole bunch of changes and stuff around that. But I had a very, very clear idea of where I wanted to bring Dead Rabbit, and use Dead Rabbit as a spoke of the wheel to spin out these other concepts that are adjacent in terms of challenging and enable us to tell fun stories about Ireland. So we were sticking to that sandbox, but just telling different stories. So that's really how it all started, and there's been a ton of research, and there's continuing to be a ton of research around all of that, getting an amazing team around me, because I have a lot of talents, but I have a lot of things that I'm shit at, and I surround myself with people who compensate and are way better than me in those specific points. So yeah, it's been a long process, but hopefully that answered your question.
Do you think, as a leader, that's one thing that we fall down? I know that it took me a lot longer than obviously you. That your team, whether it be your management team, your staff, that's the thing, is a big puzzle piece, and every puzzle piece is different, and they don't fit together if they're every single one's the same. And if you're very
Yeah.
honest with yourself and say, "I am fucking shit at this. I need someone who can fix this for me."
Yeah, I mean, that's the other part of it too. In this industry, up until pretty recently, nobody was vulnerable. Everybody was a super person, Superman, Superwoman, um, and we were all conquering, all knowing, and that's just a complete pile of garbage. Uh, and again, being in the outpatient rehabilitation rooms and going through all of those addiction issues and all of that, you're left, you walk out of those rooms not being able to really tolerate bullshit, and much less bullshitters, so I have very little time for that, given when you're in those rooms, they just strip you right to your core. So coming out of those rooms, I've no, and the people I surround myself with now, I have no problem saying I was wrong, that was a mistake. How do we
Mm.
do this better? This person's better than me at this thing. Can we work together? There's no ego with that, because ultimately we're heading. I'm looking at where we're heading or where we're trying to go, and no, not one individual is going to get you there. It's a whole team effort. So I have no, absolutely zero reservations with that now. Pre-sobriety, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have been able to go to your bar when we were with you back in the day, and if you made a better drink than me, I wouldn't have been able to admit that, because my drink was obviously the best drink. I'm the guy. I'm the guy. So that's just I think that's a maturity thing. Even though I know people my age and older than me that still haven't mastered that per
Mm.
se, but you have to have that outlook, or else you'll not get too far. You might become the best bartender, or the best individual contributor, but you'll not get to the next step. You know.
We chatted about it in Annapolis a lot, about award chasing, and obviously that's a big driver, especially for youngsters. For myself, it's definitely waned a ton now.
Yeah.
How did you make that mental shift? Obviously, as you were mentioning, your sobriety and being the outpatient and stuff like that. How did you make that mental shift away from, like, let's be a really great bar that makes profit instead of a really great bar that wins awards?
Yeah. Again, I would have been through sobriety, because I would have used a lot of these other external validators or validations to make me feel whole. I needed to become
Mm.
the world's best bartender, so I felt that invincibility, or I needed to be this guy with this woman to make me feel great, or I was constantly looking for other things to fill internal voids. So coming out and finding that inner sense of piece was the harbor that I needed to go off and chase these other aspects. So it was really it was really that, and realizing that the like my whole compass was wrong. You know, awards are validation for great work. They're not the reason for it.
Mm.
You know, so it's, and because I when I put out, I've been pretty outspoken in terms of my path and the things that piss me off. But I've always been pretty careful to not critique awards per se. It's people's relationship with them.
Hmm.
You know, so as long as the relationship is pure and you're doing it for the right reasons, then I've no issues with it. What my issues with are in this industry, or with people like me and you walk into the bar and we get an experience, but if our wives walk in, they get a very different experience.
Hmm.
That's my problem. And that's unfortunately still pretty pervasive. Um, and maybe that's just the world that we live in. But for me, it's about creating an environment for great work, having a very tight story and what we're trying to share with the world, and then relentlessly executing that and working with the team to do that, and focusing fully on the customer, because everything we do ultimately is for the customer experience.
Hmm.
You know, we create a very deliberate experience in all of our venues, and that I'm really focused on the customer. I don't care if it's not that I don't care. Like, I love that you come in or Dale comes in, but you are one person and part of a mass of people, and I'm always focused on the group as opposed to one component of the group. And I think if you have that outlook, everything else takes care of itself, you know.
Hmm. So now, like, you've redefined this modern Irish pub sort of mentality with Dead
Hmm.
Rabbit, and it's really focused. I know that you've gone from, like, as you're saying, walking around. Well, the best story I always tell is when you did come to Victoria to do a pop up at Little Jumbo, and we went to, and I'm going to say it's Irish Times, but we went to Irish Times because you wanted to watch a football game, and you and Sean are sitting there, and the bartender was wearing a kilt. And you and Sean just like tapped each other like, what the fuck is he wearing a kilt for? But you've redefined this, like, what a modern Irish pub is. I know you've done a lot of work with, like, making sure that all the photos and art is all like modern Irish artists. A lot of your music's curated that way. That's the thing. Let's just talk about, like, how are you expanding, because you've opened up in Austin, you've working on Washington DC, I think next, is that correct?
Yeah, DC's next for Dead Rabbit. Yeah, DC's the next one.
So how are you as an operator keeping that soul? Because I think a lot of times, especially when we're working at such a high concept sort of mentality in a venue, if we're not in it, it's really tough to have it still be the level of what we expect when we're not in it. So how are you keeping that soul and that structure of Dead Rabbits as you expand across the country?
Yeah, so Jim Meehan, who obviously we used to have coffee with Jim because he lived in East Village, I believe, at the time. Obviously, I think he's in Oregon now. And Jim is, well, he's a very famous author at this point, but he was better known back in the day for his work with PDT. And having coffees with Jim would have came out with a couple of lines that just stuck with both of us. But I'm a sponge. If you say something to me once, that's it locked in, and I'll because everything that goes in, I sit on it and stew on it and then shape it. Jim said, I get asked all the time. So this is his words. He gets asked all the time by people why he's not in the bar at nighttime, because he's never in PDT. When you seen Jim, Jim would have picked a coffee up at 9th Street Espresso, which is a block down from PDT, and then went on his way to walk towards it and did whatever he needed to do, make sure everybody was good, and then leave. And his retort to that was, "Did you have a great time?"
Mm,
And overwhelmingly, people when they go to PDT have a great time, so they say as much to Jim, and then Jim's retort to that would have been, "Well, I did my job." So I remember hearing that at that age, and then also hearing, so you had that philosophy, and then you had also a philosophy of this: I worked 100 hours a week or 120 hours a week. I'm this guy. Look at me, Superman. And I was going through that obviously with the merchant, and or sorry, with the Dead Rabbit, and that's what led to my issues, because that's not sustainable. So coming out of the back end of that, my focus was culture. So you got to get the culture right. You've got to have you got to be very strong on where you're headed, what behaviors are acceptable for that journey, and what are the things that you're focused on, so that I think Simon Sinek calls it his golden triangle, so the why, how, and the what. So the why for us is redefining or celebrating or showcasing Ireland as it is today, so that we can challenge the misconceptions of Ireland and America, because they're still crazy. People still come into this day and ask for black and tans, Irish car bombs, completely oblivious to how offensive that is. They still put on this potty whackery music and everything's it's just fake potty porn, or whatever you want to call it. So that's the North Star for us. Like, that's where we need to go, and there's a lot of different stories that we want to tell to achieve that aim. And then another thing that we would have done, and this would have been the work through Sean Finter as well. What are the core values that for me are just non-negotiable for our company? So we call them our being the best version of yourself. So best being people who want to be brilliant. So constantly focusing on their technique, focusing on their hospitality philosophy, knowing everything about spirits, wine, beer, all of that, like the table stake stuff, being evolving, because a lot of bartenders and servers and hospitality professionals think they're the shit when they're not. So you've got to be open to being challenged constructively and growing. Being service oriented again, and not in a selective way that we just talked about in terms of you're only going to serve your mate the best. If Kent Agodo walks in, you're going to give him an amazing experience versus just some bum off the street. And then people who are transparent. I have no time. Again, I have no time for bullshitters. If you come in, acknowledge your mistakes, be honest, hold us accountable for what we say we're going to do as well. Explain the issues, explain what customers are saying. Because if we're all being honest and candid with one another, that flywheel is going to pick up more and more momentum, and we're going to be able to move quicker and faster and do a better job. So that's the values. And then for us as a company, so that's the values that permeates through all of our recruitment materials, through everything that we do is through that prism. And then that filters down into what we actually want to focus on doing world class. What can we be world class at? So for us, we call that the Dead Rabbit facts. So people don't expect to have great food at Dead Rabbit. Food is one of those things that we do really well. We're a scratch kitchen. We're constantly investing very significantly into serving Irish food or showcasing Irish food to a great level, and being a mirror for what's happening in Ireland today. Authenticity is a big piece. So that's the art, the music, the Irish spirits, everything that we do, our programs. Cocktails is obviously a part. So we're known for our cocktails. And then the trifecta would be a big part. So one thing that we want to be the best in class at in each one of the markets that we're in is our Guinness, our Irish coffee, and our Irish spirits. So these three things are three things that we think we can be either one or two at in each market. Like, if we're not the best, we're going to be the second best. And then the final one being service again. So service is both on the values and then it's on the pillars, because it's that critical. So that's we focus on those, like the why, the how, the what, and everything. Like, we're militant about that, and this would have been one of the biggest departures in terms of me running the company now. If you're doing a great job, you're going to grow with us. There's tons of upward mobility. But if you're not doing that, you're not going to last long, because it's the culture. Number one, I won't accept it because I hold myself to that same standard. But number two, and probably most importantly, is the culture won't stand for it. The culture will eat you alive if you're not carrying your weight. And ultimately, culture, to me, so you create that culture, but culture is what happens when you're not in the building. So what, to your point, how do you grow and scale that company? And we're by no means perfect, and we're making mistakes, and we're going to continue making mistakes, and we're going to learn from them. But it being like so radical about those things that we believe is our secret sauce will put us in good stead for moving forward.
Nice. So how did with the expansion of Dead Rabbit, you've also got Irish Exit, which it's only about 18 months old, 2 years old?
Yeah, we're coming up to 2 years in September. Yeah.
How did that come? How did that come about? Because that's a super unique sort of like little offshoot baby brother of Dead Rabbit. How did that sort of come about?
Yeah, it very organically. We obviously at that point I was very much focused on refreshing Dead Rabbit to fit this new direction.
Mm,
So we spent quite a bit of money on that. The setup. Obviously, New York is our flag. You know, what's the standard bearer. So New York has to walk the talk the same way that Austin does or DC will. So it's very much focused on that. And then an opportunity presented itself to do something at Moynihan Train Hall. And the original conversations would have been around Dead Rabbit potentially doing something at Moynihan. And my whole thing, again, going back, there's an amazing book, but I think it's Gilmore and somebody else called The Authenticity Economy, and the Experience Economy. Every concept to me has to fit its context.
hmm
So Dead Rabbit fits the context that it's in. Obviously, Dead Rabbit going to the different markets, it has to fit the context because you can't just take Dead Rabbit or these other bars and throw them into these markets without any type of fitting it into those local contexts because it'll just not land. And then looking at Moynihan Train Hall, you just can't put Dead Rabbit in there because it's in a train hall. Like it just
hmm
doesn't fit. So the conversation then would have shifted towards how do we make, again, the why is challenging those misconceptions with Ireland. How can we do that, but then make the context fit in Moynihan? So at that point, we started looking at the intersection or the confluence of Irishness and transit or transitory nature, and making it the thing with Irish exit. There's hundreds of thousands of people that go through Moynihan every day. How can we grab them with something funny, light, quick, a fun experience of Ireland while they're going on their merry way? You're getting the overwhelming majority of our customers are people who are coming to work, going to a concert. They're not sitting in for huge periods of time. So that's when I thought about Irish exit because everybody knows what an Irish exit is, even though Irish people do not practice it. We're the worst we're in the bar right until the bitter end. But for me, that was so it was people had that reaction like you just had, a funny, positive reaction to it. And then the other part was what I meant by that was a quick exit to our version of Ireland while you're in these transit locations. When exit has that, it has that, like it was between the Irish goodbye or an Irish goodbye and the Irish exit. And that was the time where the movie An Irish Goodbye won an Oscar. So we didn't want to go down that route.
Mhm.
So we had the name, it was in a train hall, making the whole brand speak to transitory nature. We have the flapper boards that were used back in the train halls back in the early 19th or 20th century, right up until fairly recently, until the digital boards came in. So give it that you hear the flapper boards
Yep.
flipping, so there's that tactile element, and then making the brand feel really fun and lighthearted, and then building on the key success factors of Dead Rabbit. Great pint of Guinness, solid cocktails, super quick. So I'm hesitant to say this, but it's like Burger King style Dead Rabbit. It's like the
Mhm.
big things of Dead Rabbit, but done to fit the context and super, super quick. So great quality, fun, vibrant. Because again, a lot of these Irish bars and train stations, airports, sports arenas, they're like bitty, crappy, like bitty McBollocks or McFakes or whatever. They're just terrible. So we just wanted to do something that was fun, quick, lighthearted. You had a good reaction to, and it had great quality. So that's really how it came to be. And now our focus is on growing that as its own little thing. And we're also looking at different concepts now that enable us to do different adjacencies and different verticals and tell slightly different stories because the amount of Irish stories that are there to be told or there's just so many. So for me, we're at day one with what we can do.
Yeah, because I think Jason Literal uh, was telling me that people are actually going to Irish Exit, even though they're not catching a train or anything. They're going to Irish Exit just for the experience. They're
Yeah,
not coming in by train. They're not leaving by train. They're just going to Irish Exit for a drink, which
it's
I think
wild.
is
And
that's crazy.
people are telling us like the Irish exit pint of Guinness is rated higher by a lot of people than the Dead Rabbit one, which just blows. I don't even know how that makes sense because the Guinness line for Irish exit, which is meant to be one of the factors, is like 200 feet long. So it beats me. But again, a lot of these things requires luck. So people like we have all these great ideas and stuff, but ultimately when you put a product or a concept into the world, customers tell you whether it's not. You can feel passionate about it all you want, but ultimately it's the customers that tell you whether it's good or not.
Mm. And you've got, as you were saying, you got a couple of new concepts coming out. What's the concept behind McGarry's, the new sports bar that you work? Can you talk about that one? Can we chat about that one?
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah, McGarry's. So I'm a huge sports fan, as you know. Like you took me to the bar, the Irish Times. So sports is a huge thing for me. There's a couple of things that I am obsessive about. So reading, running, sports, Irishness. Dead Rabbit, we don't really do. So Dead Rabbit does all the Irish stuff, but it doesn't really, and we do a bit, but it's still all around Irish sports and Dead Rabbit now. But we don't really do anything with the sports component. And I was I'm seeing these, seeing a couple of different things. You're seeing these entertainment, sportsy type venues popping up. You know, sport, Top Golf and all these other ones, and they're just shit. They're completely devoid of character, big monolithic spaces. So you're seeing that, and there's obviously appetite for those experience-driven experience, like the concepts. So that's great, but the execution of them, I don't think is great. It doesn't feel like an F&B experience. Um, and then the other thing you're seeing is these premium uh sports bars. It's Justin Timberlake and somebody, Tom Brady done one. Where there's these, they're just not good. They're no fun to hang out in. And then on the other side of that, you have sports bars. Like I love sports, but I hate going to sports bars because they're very masculine. It's
Hmm.
sticky floors. Again, they're just there. It's a commodity. It's not. There's no rhyme or reason on it for it beyond that. The game finishes, the bar is completely empty. So I thought that was and I feel, and we're obviously gonna do this, but what the Dead Rabbit has done to pubs in America, I feel like we can do this with sports bars. But again, through the lens of, again, everything speaks to the core of the company, which is contemporary Ireland and celebrating our heritage. There's an amazing story to be told there around Irish sports, but also more importantly, obviously, given the context that we're in America, in terms of the Irish American influence into American sports and worldwide sports. In NASCAR, you had Danica Patrick, Tom Brady. You've all of these huge people in all of these different elements that nobody has. It hasn't been told about cohesively as one concept. So that's really the story of McGarry's. It's taken bits of that entertainment, the bits of the sports side, wrapping it in an Irish and an Irish American story, and making it a beautiful venue, and an immersive venue, and a venue that's dynamic just beyond the sports. Because the other part I hate when you go into these sports bars is you go in and it's just TVs everywhere and they're on 24/7 when they've no need to be on 24/7.
Mm.
So making it a compelling experience when the games are on, yes, absolutely, but also making it a great experience when the sports aren't on, and making those TVs disappear, and you've got some gaming components that activate. You've music, you've the all of the stories that we tell within the space. So we're opening our first one of those at some point next year, and we're very excited. We're very excited about it. It's taken us a bit of time, but we're really excited to get that concept out in the wild.
Wow, I always get blown away with how busy you are and how you balance it all. Because you got a family, you've got what, 3 or 4 venues now. How do you, on a personal level, balance this work life balance? As you were saying, you love running and doing your personal stuff as well. How do you balance it for someone who's out there who wants to open 2 or 3 venues and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to do that machismo 120 hours a week sort of deal? How do you make it work?
Well, first and foremost, I fully believe in that oxygen mask theory. You got to take care of yourself. I remember, again, a lot of my stuff goes back to the rooms when I was in outpatient rehabilitation, and I remember one of the counselors saying, "Don't date anybody in your first year because you need to be good before
Hmm.
you start a relationship." And obviously, I didn't listen. and started dating, and it was a car crash because I wasn't good. So you've got to make sure you're good, you're feeling strong and looking after yourself. So for me, that's running. Like I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, it gets done right away. For me, that's reading. I read obsessively and I read widely to keep me inspired and keep my mind sharp. So those are two things that are me are point of control. They have to happen, and if they don't happen, that's when things start slipping. And obviously, I do other things like therapy and other bits and pieces to keep me sharp, and they're critically important. So that's that stuff. For the work side of things, you got to have a great team. Obviously, we've spoken at length about the culture, but you have to have a team that are fully empowered and trusted to do great work. So I obviously, since I've taken over as leader of the company, we have a phenomenal team, but there's also been other people that they weren't doing what we needed them to do, and they've been moved on or they've left, and that's fine, but you've got to have full trust in that team, and then you've also got to give them the space that they need to do the work and not sweat their details unless they give you a reason to sweat them.
Mm.
So that would be one thing. I fully empower our leaders and our teams to do the work. Everybody in this industry should be adult, and we only hire adults. And if you hire adults and you have the right structure, the right team, the right leaders, things things should go in the right direction. So that would be another piece. And then to your point about family, if you're looking after yourself, you have the right structure, the right culture, the right team, the right leaders, you should be able to have a good family life too, in terms of like I don't work. I Monday to Friday, and I work some weekends if the business demands it, but Monday to Friday I put in the bulk of my work, and then I clock off in the weekend. Like I'm still connected in the weekend. I still keep an eye on things, but I spend those mostly with my family, my wife and the boys. So that's how I balance it, but it's not like I still work 60 odd, 70 hours a
Hmm.
week, but I'm still able to do my running, my reading, and spend time with family. But I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you and say it's idyllic. There's still moments where my wife's not happy, the kids want more time, this business over here, there's a fire over here somewhere that needs to be, there's still stuff going on, and again, that's very important to me to be authentic in that way, because on social media you just think everything's Disney, everybody's great. But it's hard. Life's hard, and but I enjoy that journey of constantly waking up every day and trying to put the ball a bit further ahead in the field.
As you grow this, I think in hospitality, it's always sort of a negative connotation. But as you grow this and you're building these successful businesses, multi units across the country, do you have an exit strategy in mind? Because I feel like a lot of us in hospitality, we get into this going, we're going to do this till we die, whether or not we work ourselves to death or we have a heart attack on the floor on a Friday night because we've been chugging Red Bull too much, that sort of thing. Like it's always this sort of mentality of like, we're in this business, even if you're an owner, and I'm gonna leave when I am dead. That's my retirement plan. Um, Exit strategy is always sort of seen like, oh, you can't talk about an exit strategy. This is your passion. This is your livelihood. This is what you live for. How do you frame that for yourself as an exit strategy as you're building such a massive like entity?
So there's a couple of things there. I think dead rabbit. I have an exit strategy in terms of this. If we do what we say we're going to do, and obviously there's a lot we still need to do for that to be the case. If we do what we say we're going to do, a more institutional hospitality company or food and beverage company will take us over whole. Um, I most likely at that point will not want to be in the day to day at
Mm,
or pretty much at all. So I have a timeline in place for that, and I have full humility in that the companies will come in and buy us at that level. They'll want to take this into the tens, fifties, hundreds of like they'll want to open up much more, and that to be honest I'm not really interested in that. There's people who are much more gifted than me at doing that. Um, my whole focus is Ireland, challenging the misconceptions, doing cool stories, having fun and having a great culture, and that's my part. I'm in the small the middle part of that, not
Hmm.
the when it gets to that level. So I think I've got a good few years left to accomplish the what we've set out to do. But I have very much a goal of in 3 to 5 years having a venue in New Jersey where I live, and having a venue on the I spend a lot of time with my family at the shore in New Jersey, and both of those places do not have good places. So I'd like to fix that with concepts that I've already I'm constantly thinking of ideas and concepts that I'd like to do. So I already have ideas there. Um, and I've recently just started writing. So I'm in the process of writing something now, and it's a process that I've enjoyed very much, and I would like to continue doing that as well, related to Ireland and some things going to Irish like products and stuff like that. So I have a couple of ideas around that, but I also, so even at that point, so that's like 5, 10, 15 years, there will be a point where I don't feel like I have anything to say, and I'd like to be in the position to stop talking at that level and start enjoying. Like, I'll still stay active, and there's other things that have tons of other things I want to do. And I definitely do not see myself in this industry until I'm 60, 70. I know I've seen people who do it, but I'd be surprised if I'm one of them. I will be very active and doing stuff, but a part of me thinks the older I get, I'd probably want to get into teaching or paying that forward to the next generation, you know. So yeah, that's where my head's at the minute.
Nice. Um, if you had, if you could go back to 2013, Jack, fresh off the plane, landed in New York City, what would you whisper in his ear?
See, I get asked that all the time, and I think I've honest it.
Oh, come on, you can't
Answer.
tell you. I thought that was a
No,
really
no,
original question.
but I think honestly, my whole I don't know if it was I don't think if Jeff Bezos wrote this book, and I know people have many feelings on billionaires, myself included. And one of his philosophies is regret optimization, again, which is very clinical. But when you make the mistakes, and I've made a million, I will continue to make a million. How do you walk away with the right lessons and making sure that you've implemented those into the next set of failures or successes? You know, I'm a big believer in, and I think it's Samuel Beckett. If you've ever tried, no matter, try again, feel better. You know, that type of like,
Mm,
I fully believe in that philosophy. Um, so there's nothing I would say. There's a very few things I regret and I would like not to have done. They're not things for this conversation. But in terms of industry stuff, I wouldn't have. There's nothing I go back and say do differently. You know, I'm here talking to you now, and we're having this moment now because of
mhm.
where we all went through. So I'm very proud of my career to date. There's things that I definitely was. There's a lot of things that I've effed up on. A lot of apologies that I've made, and I'll probably continue to make. But I can't say that I would go back and say anything different, because that guy back then was you know was extremely driven. I don't, even if I had been able to go back and speak to him, that version of me would have most likely told me to F off, you know.
I was just about to say. Don't.
I think that's, but the version of me now would listen to the version of me now. I think the one in 2013 wouldn't have listened to anybody. Maybe Sean Muldoon. But even that would have been, it depends what mood it was in.
What are you talking about, mate? Go fuck off, old timer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Particularly for a couple of pints of Guinness in me.
So we're at the stage of the show where I give you five deep podcast questions.
Okay.
Nice reflection period. What is one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most, and how do you carry that forward in your life?
One experience. Oh God, that's hard. In hospital, in industry
In
specifically,
life,
or
in
any
life,
in
in
life.
life in general.
I'd say the most pivotal moment for me in my life would have been, again, to beat a drum here, but I remember being in one of the rooms very, very early into my recovery period and very skeptical about everything. The rooms would have been covered in like AA slogans that I thought were a pile of shite, like progress not perfection, and one day at a time. All this bullshit. That obviously I think they're meaningful now, but at the time I was like, this is a pile of nonsense. And I was sitting very skeptical in one particular meeting, and there was a Japanese American lady who was giving this session, and she was talking about a Cherokee parable of the the good wolf and the bad wolf, and it was a guy explaining to his grandson. So his grandson saying there's these two wolves. So one wolf was envy, jealousy, fear, anger. The other one was goodness, wholeheartedness, all of that fun stuff. And the son said, who wins?" And the older guy said, "The one that you feed." And that simple story was something that, like, I have it actually hung up in the wall here, and I have it in my in my house, because that was really when it crystallized that I'd been feeding the wrong wolf. I'd been
Mm.
feeding the destructive one, the narcissistic one, and I needed to feed this better version, the version that I wanted to become. So that would, to me, is one of the most important pieces of, don't know if it was advice or she was just sharing stuff, but whatever it was extremely meaningful, and I try to live my life by that.
If you could leave one lasting message or piece of wisdom for the world, what would it be and why?
Are you allowed to curse on that? Yeah, I'm assuming you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
swear
Yeah.
away.
Don't be a cunt is my advice to people, because the world's full of them. There's a lot of them in the world today. Um, and I remember, I don't know what show. I think it was one of Gary Pearce's movies, and I seen it, and I was like, that's the perfect advice for people. So don't be a cunt.
Looking back on your journey, what is something you wish you understood earlier in life?
This career is a marathon, not a sprint. When I first started out, I wanted, and I see this a lot, particularly, and be, I'm not one of these guys to talk about the younger generations, because I was that younger generation at one point, and as were you, but I'm seeing it particularly in the social media, smartphone era. People
Mm-hmm.
want this immediacy, and they want the thing without putting the work in to get the thing. And I was very much one of those people. So know that it's a marathon. Put the work in. The good stuff will come to you if you're on the right path. So that would be something I would be big on. Because, and another thing, a lot of people in our industry now are trying to create tomorrow without knowing what happened yesterday.
Mm.
So you've got to go through the process. You got to go through the journey. You got to be the bar back before you're the beverage director. It's a process. Um, so yeah, that I'd be big on that.
How do you define success, and has your definition of it changed over time?
Success for me is family. Um, I do. I think this might have been through Sean Finter as well, but going through that exercise of when you're on your deathbed, I will not be talking about, "I'm so happy we had 5 million dead rabbits." I'll be happy about if I've a wife that I love, which I obviously have that, and boys that are good men, and they have families, and I have grandsons and granddaughters, and everybody's good. That's really what I'll be hanging my hat on. So that's success to me, because ultimately we do all of this. We love it, but we do it all because of the people that we love.
What do you hope your legacy will be, and what steps are you taking to build it?
Changing the conversation around Irishness in America would probably be the big one, yeah. In terms of like, I do actions every day to try and do that. So, building Dead Rabbit, doing, like, even the book that I'm working on right now would be another piece of that. The other concepts that we're introducing are part of that. Building a great company for people is a part of that, because, again, to your point, when you come into Dead Rabbit, it's not me serving you, it's somebody else, and they've got to believe in this mission every bit as much as I do. So they're the things I'm doing.
Lovely. And when you did imbibe, what was your favorite classic cocktail?
Favorite classic cocktail?
There's a nice little light
uh
note to finish it all off.
I think it would have been a Turf Club.
Oh,
I liked wet martini. I don't I still obviously I don't drink, but I still don't get this dry martini thing, because they just blow the brains of you. I remember going to all these bars with Shawn and all these London bars, and just couldn't get over, like, they were putting on a bottle of frozen gin and pouring it into glass. I'm like, this is
I know the bar.
rocket.
I know the bar you're talking about too.
It's just rocket fuel. So I like wet. I like martinis were created with so much more vermouth back then because they tasted better. So I think we should remember that's why they were created in the first place. So yeah, a turf club or a 50, anything that's equal parts or more vermouth, I'm game on.
Nice. Well, man, thank you so much for your time. I after hearing your stuff at Annapolis, and we had a lot of conversations one-on-one together, it's rejigged a lot of things in my brain, which I really appreciate. And yeah, it's nice to have a reset, even as you get onto your, well, I think this year's my 28th year in the industry. It's nice to have a reset every now and then, and refocus where you're headed.
Brilliant. Yeah, listen, I was the same as seeing you in Annapolis, so we're all going in the same place and trying to do the same things.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. And it was just an inspirational chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, mate.
Cheers, man. I'll chat to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Thanks for listening, Pose Shifters. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoy sitting down with friends and peers and just chatting about the industry and getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's really going on out there. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, everything on all the platforms. Just hit it up and I'll do my best to answer any queries or questions you have. I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.